All right, listener, get ready because today we're going deep on agroecology. You sent in some super interesting stuff on this, and I, for one, am really excited to unpack it all.
It's not just about, gardening. It's a whole system, a science, a movement.
I love it. When you said that, it made me think of that saying, think globally, act locally. Does that apply here?
Definitely. It really captures the essence of agroecology. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything.
Right, like how our food choices have ripple effects across the planet.
Exactly. And it's about taking action at the local level to create those positive changes.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up for a second, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
What exactly is agroecology?
It's kind of like how a forest isn't just a random collection of trees?
Right, it's a whole ecosystem with tons of interactions.
Exactly. It's a complex web of relationships between plants and animals and fungi and the soil, all working together. And agroecology aims to bring that same kind of thinking into our farms and food systems.
So instead of a monoculture field of just corn, we're talking about a mix of crops, maybe some trees, animals integrated into the system, all of that boosting the health of the soil.
You got it. And it leads to a ton of benefits. Like, did you know that some agroecological farms are actually pulling carbon out of the atmosphere?
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
they're like carbon capturing superheroes.
Pretty much. They're storing that carbon in the soil, which is a huge win for the climate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not just about reducing harm, it's actually about healing the planet.
Exactly. And it's not some brand new invention either.
Right. It's not like someone just came up with this in a lab.
No way. Agroecology has roots that go way back centuries.
Like that milpa system I read about where they grow corn beans and squash together.
That's a perfect example. Indigenous communities around the world have been practicing these principles for generations, even if they didn't call it agroecology.
So it's ancient wisdom meeting modern science.
I like that. The story of agroecology is this fascinating journey of rediscovering this wisdom and applying it in new contexts.
I'm curious about that journey. Where did it all begin?
Well, one turning point was the Green Revolution.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal. Increased food production and all?
Right. But it also came with some unintended consequences, like the overuse of chemical inputs that ended up harming the environment.
The classic trade-off.
Exactly. And that's when scientists and farmers started seriously searching for alternatives.
Like Sir Albert Howard?
He was one of the pioneers. Way back in the early 1900s, he was already talking about the importance of working with nature, not against it.
So he was like the OG agroecologist.
Uh-huh. You could say that. He was a huge advocate for natural farming methods. And his ideas, along with the growing awareness of the Green Revolution's downsides, really helped fuel a resurgence of interest in agroecology.
So it went from a niche concept to something much bigger.
Definitely. By the late 20th century, agroecology was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It had evolved into a powerful social movement, especially in the global south.
I read about that groups like La Via Campesina advocating for food sovereignty.
That's a key concept in the agroecology movement. It's about giving communities control over their own food systems.
Okay, so food sovereignty is about more than just having enough food to eat.
It's about power. It's about who gets to decide what's grown, how it's grown, and who benefits.
That makes sense. So agroecology isn't just about what happens on the farm. It's got this whole social justice element.
It's all interconnected. And what's really exciting is that it's starting to gain mainstream recognition.
Like organizations like the FAO are taking notice.
Exactly. They're seeing the potential of agroecology to address some of the world's most pressing challenges.
That's huge. So it's going from the fringes to the forefront.
It's a shift in thinking, a shift in values, and it's happening all over the world.
This is really fascinating stuff, but I'm curious from the listener's perspective, why should they care about all of this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Exactly. What's the big takeaway here?
Well, for me, it comes down to this. Agroecology isn't just a feel-good concept. It's a solution.
Yeah.
It's a way to create a food system that's good for people, good for the planet, and good for the future.
I like that. Good for people, good for the planet, good for the future. It's a win-win-win.
Exactly. And that's why I think everyone should care about agroecology, because it's about creating a world where we can all thrive together.
I couldn't agree more. All right, so we've established what agroecology is. Now let's dive into how it actually works.
Yeah.
What are the key principles and practices that make this whole system tick?
That's a great place to start. Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
I'm ready when you are.
So we talked about agroecology being all about these vibrant systems mimicking nature's brilliance. But what about you, listener? What's grabbed your attention so far?
For me, it's this idea that we can actually heal the planet while we grow food. It's like we don't just reduce the harm, but we actively make things better.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a really powerful aspect of agroecology. But how do you think that actually works? Like, how do we mimic nature on a farm?
Give us the details. What are the actual practices that make it all work?
Okay, well, one of the core principles is maximizing biodiversity. So instead of those giant fields of just corn, we're talking about polycultures, planting a variety of crops all together in the same space.
Right, so it's like a mixed salad instead of just a bowl of lettuce.
That's a good way to put it, and it makes a huge difference, like for pests, for example.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. It's like the pests can't get a foothold when there's so much diversity.
Right. It's like a built-in pest control system. And the different plants, they all have different root systems, so they're not competing for the same nutrients in the soil.
So it's better for the soil, too.
Way better. Healthy soil is like the foundation of agroecology.
Because healthy soil means healthy plants and healthy food.
Exactly. It's teeming with all these microorganisms and fungi and earthworms. It's a whole world down there.
And it's all connected.
Right. So in agroecology, we use practices like composting and cover cropping to build up that soil health.
So it's like feeding the soil so it can feed us.
I like that analogy. What else? Well, there's integrated pest management, or IPM.
I saw that in the research, too. It sounds like a really smart approach.
It is. It's about combining a bunch of different techniques to keep those pests in check without resorting to chemical pesticides.
So it's like outsmarting them instead of just trying to kill everything.
Yeah. It's about understanding their life cycles and using things like crop rotation, beneficial insects, even physical barriers to manage them.
That sounds more like a strategy game than just spraying chemicals.
It kind of is. It's like you're working with nature instead of fighting against it.
I love that.
Hmm.
But I'm guessing it's not always easy for farmers to switch from conventional methods to agroecology. What are some of the challenges they face?
Yeah, there are definitely some hurdles. One of the big ones is yields.
You mean like how much food they can produce?
Exactly. Conventional agriculture is all about maximizing yields, even if it means sacrificing long-term sustainability.
It's like squeezing every last drop out of the land.
Right. But with agroecology, it's more about playing the long game. You're building a system that's resilient and sustainable, but it might take a few years for those yields to catch up.
So it's a short-term versus long-term trade-off.
Yeah. And beyond yields, there are challenges like access to markets.
Because agroecological products often require different processing or handling, right?
It's a whole different system. And then there's the need for consumer education.
People need to understand the value of these products and be willing to pay a fair price.
Exactly. It's about shifting our priorities and recognizing that sustainably produced food might cost a bit more, but it's an investment in our health and the health of the planet.
So how do we make this transition easier for farmers? What are some solutions?
Well, education and training are crucial. Farmers need access to information and resources to learn these new techniques.
And they need support from each other, right? Like farmer-to-farmer networks?
Absolutely. Sharing knowledge and experiences is essential. And then there's the financial side of things.
Because switching to agroecology can be expensive, especially at first.
Right. So things like subsidies and grants can really help ease that burden.
It's about sending a message that we value these practices and we're willing to invest in them.
It's about creating an environment where agroecology can thrive.
So what about success stories? Are there examples of places where this is already working?
Oh, tons. There are so many inspiring examples. One that always comes to mind is Sikkim in India.
Sikkim, that's the one that went fully organic, right?
They did. Back in 2016, they became the world's first fully organic state.
A whole state. That's incredible. How did they manage that?
It was a huge effort. They phased out chemical inputs, invested in farmer training, and really mobilized the whole community.
And what were the results?
They saw increased biodiversity, healthier soil, improved water quality, and even higher incomes for farmers.
That's amazing. Proof that it can be done.
It really is. And it's not just Sikkim. There's the Rodale Institute in the U.S. They've been researching and promoting regenerative organic agriculture for decades.
Wait, regenerative agriculture, is that different from just organic?
It takes it a step further. It's not just about sustaining the land, it's about actively healing and regenerating it.
So it's like going beyond organic.
Yeah. And their research has shown that it can be just as productive, if not more so, than conventional methods, while also providing all those ecological benefits.
That's really impressive. Any other examples?
Yeah, there's the Machakos district in Kenya. They were facing severe land degradation, but they managed to turn things around using agroecological techniques like agroforestry.
Agroforestry. That's where you plant trees alongside crops.
Right, exactly. It helps improve soil fertility, reduce erosion, and create a more resilient system.
So it's like working with nature to restore the land.
And they saw some amazing results. They actually increased their crop yields and improved water availability.
That's incredible. So these are just a few examples, but it sounds like agroecology is already making a real difference in the world.
It definitely is, and it's gaining momentum all the time.
That's inspiring to hear. But I want to know, how do we take this to the next level? How do we scale up these solutions to create a truly sustainable food system on a global scale?
That's the big question, and that's what we need to talk about next. So we've seen that agroecology works. It's got these amazing success stories, but how do we take it to the next level?
Right. So it's one thing to have a few farms doing things differently, but how do we transform the whole system?
Well, policy is a big piece of the puzzle.
Like governments need to step up and support this shift.
Exactly. We need policies that incentivize sustainable practices and make it easier for farmers to transition away from industrial agriculture.
So things like redirecting those agricultural subsidies.
Yeah. Instead of supporting the big agribusinesses, let's support the farmers who are doing things right.
Makes sense.
And
What about research? Does that play a role?
huge role. We need more research on agroecological techniques, on things like pest management and soil health.
Because there's always more to learn, right?
Always. And the more we know, the better equipped we'll be to create these sustainable and resilient systems.
Okay, so we've got policy, we've got research. What about regulations? Can they help promote agroecology?
Definitely, regulations can help level the playing field, set standards for things like pesticide use or water conservation.
So it's not about giving agroecology an unfair advantage, it's about making sure it's not at a disadvantage.
Right. And then there's the market side of things.
How do we make sure that farmers who adopt these methods can actually sell their products?
Well, consumer awareness is key. People need to know about these products and understand the value they bring.
So labeling schemes can help with that.
Exactly. Make it easy for people to identify agroecologically produced food.
And maybe even some tax breaks or incentives for businesses that support these practices.
It's about aligning those economic forces with our sustainability goals.
So it's not just about doing the right thing, it's about making it the smart thing to do.
Right. And all of this needs to happen on a global scale.
Because food systems are global, right?
Exactly. So we need international collaboration, knowledge-sharing partnerships between countries.
Yeah. It's about learning from each other's successes and challenges.
And working together to create a food system that works for everyone.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've covered so much ground. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to the listener. What can we do as individuals to support this movement?
Oh, there are so many ways to get involved. You can support organizations that are working on agroecology, volunteer at a local farm or community garden, even start growing some of your own food.
So getting our hands dirty, reconnecting with where our food comes from.
It's a powerful experience, and don't underestimate the power of your voice. Talk to your friends and family about this, share information online, contact your elected officials.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating the future we want.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the practical stuff, it's about a shift in mindset.
Like a deeper understanding of our relationship with nature.
Exactly. Agroecology is about recognizing that we're part of this web of life, not separate from it.
And that our actions have consequences.
But it's also about hope. It's about believing that we can create a better future. A future where food nourishes us all and regenerates the planet.
It's been an amazing journey exploring this topic with you. I've learned so much.
Me too. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to take action.
Because ultimately, the future of our food system is in our hands.
It's up to all of us to create the world we want to see.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into agroecology.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those questions coming.